they put me where they put anybody who had disabilities and were troublemakers at in the school.
Right.
So I had to learn all this stuff, IEP and all that other stuff. And you kind of have to wiggle your way through it, but you basically have to have a stance like, listen, this is my child. This is not yours.
Mm-hmm.
I send them here to learn, not for you guys to punish them. Now, don't sit here and call me up and say my child did this and that and expect me to punish them when they get home. I will talk with them and see if they're going to tell me a different story or they're going to lie to me or whatever. But don't expect me to punish them because you want me to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of those times when parents sign those letters saying, do not spank my child at school, do not paddle them, no corporal punishment, those letters aren't checked, every time. A lot of places they paddle them anyway. In fact, there's been lawsuits over kids that already have medical conditions. Paddling could have caused, issues with the medical.
Well, it's not just in school. It's also when it comes from another generation that thought spanking was A-okay and they did it for everything. And you also have to deal with them as well. Because they're like, well, your child's having a tantrum. Why aren't you giving them a paddling? Well, because if I sit here and ignore them, they'll get over it.
Yeah.
And it's
abuse is abuse.
Right.
But back in their time, it wasn't categorized as abuse.
Right, and you're not going to change the thinking of people that grew up thinking that's the way to do it.
It's just like a whole bunch of old cultural stuff that used to be A-okay back in their day, but it's not A-okay now because,
things are changing. Yeah, Joe Frost, who is the super nanny, did a poll, and just recently about spanking in schools. She was saying it's legal in public schools in 19 U.S. states. And she did a poll, and 1,000 people responded, and 90% of them said no to spanking in schools. So, people, the attitudes have changed. And it's hard to sell that to the older generation. You're not going to change their minds. It's just like on politics or religion. You're not going to change their minds. But when it comes to your child's safety at school, they're beginning to realize that people will sue or, it's just more trouble than it's worth. And so I think schools are abandoning this, and it's happening, but places it's really got a hold, and it's hard to change.
So, Julie, let me ask you this. 5 years from now, where do you see this going? Do you see corporal punishment?
Will ban it.
Repeat that, say it again.
I think within 5 years to be banned by the federal government.
And that's what I'm hoping. And I'm hoping that the laws are changed by the federal government, that they are putting this in action all across the board. And they have to put it in action in every single state, in every single school, because we cannot continue moving forward with our children being abused at home, potentially, going to school, being abused. The cycle continues and continues and continues, and we have to put a stop to that, right? We have to put a stop to that.
And children learn helpless. Right, they learn how to be a victim of domestic violence. They learn to be a perpetrator of domestic violence through all of this. It's just not okay. And I think that we're heading that way. People are realizing that, everything's in a big mess, and that we all need to do changes. And it takes effort. It doesn't take any effort to be lazy and just smack somebody if they do something you don't like, but that's not going to change anybody's behavior. All that does is make the situation worse.
Right.
So I think,
and what Aaliyah was saying, I agree with what she was saying. I grew up pretty traditional as well, and my parents had my parents in the country or the town in which I grew up in, as well as the schools, they also had the saying, spare the rod, spare the child, right? So, it's a traditional saying. It's biblical, if you spare the rod, You spoil the child. I heard that all the time growing up, all the time. And I never understood what it meant, right, until I got older.
Further on and spoil the child. Don't hit them, spoil them. I don't know. I raised my 3 kids. I didn't have to hit them. I mean, if you redirect their attention, if they're getting a little wild and crazy, it takes time and patience, and people just don't take the time and have the patience. But we are making progress, schools need to be held to our standards. And I know our alumni agree that, and there are good ones that are working to make that happen, like Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She's got a bill that would help, improve the lives of our children while they're at school, so that they're not being secluded or restrained or hit with a wooden paddle. Those things will happen. I just don't know when it's going to be.
Wooden or any paddle. Yeah, wooden paddle. Or any paddle. Yeah.
Right, no
because in Catholic schools and some of them private schools, exactly, you have the yardsticks, and we were accustomed to the yardsticks and the rulers in school as well when I was coming up, and so I experienced it in every capacity. And so I think that the laws and times are definitely changing now, and it's important that we continue to support and advocate for our children, because they not only are they our future, they are our hope.
They are. And you know what? I've even seen, it's shocking, but I've seen people that work in schools, actually men, take their belts off to spank kids. That I know of three incidents where that happened, and the court always came out in favor of the educator over the child, always. That they allow corporal punishment, if anything goes. So they can take off their belt and hit your child. Unbelievable. But, we're going to get there. And I love that we're able to share this information that helps raise awareness. And with awareness comes accountability. But
we have to hold people accountable.
Bill, I think hopefully we'll see something happen soon on that in the Senate, and hopefully it won't stall, because that's exactly what happened in North Carolina. It went through the House and was approved, and then it got to the Senate, and it just died in the Senate. And they haven't since then, even though none of the school districts now in Carolina, the public school districts, use corporal punishment anymore. Through great advocacy.
And that was in 2017 when the bill died.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bill died in 2017, so it's definitely time. It's definitely time. Yeah. I think we should definitely put it back before them right now while Trump is in office and before the passing over of that.
You would think the states would be wanting to be the next state to ban this. I think it would be a good thing for the state. If I'd have known about corporal punishment before I moved here to Tennessee, we wouldn't have moved. I had no idea. I told my husband, I didn't know what the school would be. We moved here from Southern California, and I live in a rural area with about 8,000 people, and it's like farms and that kind of thing, and kind of low income. And I just never dreamed. I saw corporal punishment in the student handbook, and once you sign the page that they require you to sign and send back, saying you've read the handbook and whatever, that's giving them the permission, even though they don't need your permission, to spank your child. And I didn't know what corporal punishment was. I had to look it up. And I thought, well, that's not going to be a problem. Our kids are all well-behaved and everything. Then the day came when my son was in 8th grade, and he said, you need to call my mom and dad. You can't do that to me. And, they did call, and I told her, well, we don't do that to our kids. And I don't do that to our child. And then that's how I got involved in advocacy.
Well, we certainly appreciate what you're doing. We're going to go to the phone lines in just a few moments. We're going to reach out to Aaliyah, and we got a few other callers that are on the line as well. Lucinda, any feedback before we go back to the phone line?
Yeah, I work in a setting that is a therapeutic day school, and so in Illinois, and we were just told not too long ago that we cannot have seclusion rooms or the locked seclusion rooms. And there were so many of my coworkers that were complaining, and I thought, why are we complaining? We shouldn't even have this to begin with. We shouldn't even have to be told we can't use it. so it was really, it was liberating because we shouldn't have to have it. And it really made a lot of my coworkers that were, like you said, Julie, being lazy, really have to work hard to build these relationships with these kids, which is what they should be doing already. And so in my placement, I'm 5'3", I'm not big at all, and so I'm not physically intimidating, but there hasn't been a time when one of those kids has raised a hand at me and they've raised a hand at someone else, because I have not had to.
Respect you.
Right. I have not had to be intimidating, because I've worked on those relationships with those kids before I do anything else, because I'm not going to get anywhere without those relationships. So,
I would never want to badmouth educators or people who are working with especially kids with disabilities or that are, troubled kids that are acting out, because, they can be violent too. And I understand that they have to be able to deal with, these people, but there are safe ways that they can be trained in how to do that.
Yeah, and those are the kids I work with. I work with the kids that do physically, verbally threaten the adults. I've been threatened many times, but there's no It's not. And one of the things that we've been doing as an agency and as a school is going out and educating other community schools about trauma-informed practices that they can be doing instead of the other things like corporal punishment or anything that's abusive, verbal abuse to the kids, making them feel like they're nothing.
That's exactly correct.
That's been really fun. That's been really important to the school that I work for, which is why
I appreciate
one of the reasons I love it.
Yeah,
because I can do something in a community. Even if I can't change it on a bigger level, I can do that in this community and at least create that awareness so the schools around here can know that there are other options.
Yeah, that's so good. I thank you for sharing that with us, because I would never. I'm not about bad mouthing educators. I think that they're wonderful. It does take a lot of patience. It's got to be incredibly hard to do what they do every day and to take care of so many children, especially if they have acting out issues or some sort of learning disability or whatever. And I know they can be hard to to go with the program sometimes. But the answer isn't by using violence, and there are other
exactly.
No violence, no threatening, positive reinforcements. You got to have that. No threatening behaviors, because we lead by example. If they see us, doing this, then they're going to mimic that. They're going to grow up and be, be and do the same thing as well. And again, I wish I had advocates as a child that was, doing the advocacy that we're doing now, and that would have just changed that whole generational piece, right? That would have altered that, because no child, 3rd, 4th grade, 5th grade, I wasn't even in 5th grade when I experienced all of this with the paddling and the whipping, the beatings, the spankings in school, and the seclusions and the restraining.
Right.
Yeah.
But I taught all my kids when they were growing up to protect them from sexual abuse, because that happens a lot with people in your family or people that know them well or that have access to them. So you have to teach your kids, people don't have a right to be putting their hands on your body.
That's
they
right.
don't
Because
touching you. Yeah.
Paddling is borderline sexual abuse as well.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's related. Like if you research it on the internet, you're going to see a lot of smut, because there are people are, aroused by that thing. I think it's more of a power thing than anything. But it's dangerous, and we shouldn't be subjecting kids to that in schools at the hands of who knows. A lot of the people who work in schools, they have a big problem with sexual abuse of children anyway. And I'm not saying they're all bad, but it is a problem in our schools. And to be having them paddling or spanking kids, some people will take advantage of that. They are into that kind of abuse of children and violence, and it's not.
Yeah,
we shouldn't be paying our tax dollars to have that happen to kids.
We're gonna take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back. We're going to the phone lines. All the phone lines will be muted. We are going to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to the Kingya Podcast, As you may have guessed, I am your host,